When I was around 8 years old, I remember hearing the word priceless for the first time. My first language is not English, so when I translated this word in my little mind, priceless meant that it was so cheap that it didn't have a price, so it would be free. Imagine my confusion when I discovered it actually meant that a thing was so valuable that it was difficult to put a price tag on it. So it started me thinking, what makes something priceless? I looked up the definition and 2 words stood out to me, and they were unique and impactful. Those 2 words fully describe the mission trip our family went on a couple months ago. So this past December, we joined a group of around 40 people for a 2-week mission trip to Cuba. Our team took part in VBS, Health Expo, Evangelistic Series, and the building of 2 churches. For the Vacation Bible School, we held it outside, and the nice thing is that kids from the neighborhood, they just kept coming. While the Evangelistic Series was going on with the parents, the kids, they were in the VBS program. And Denisa and a couple ladies had a wonderful time helping teach the kids. And because there was no building for the kids to meet, when it got dark, they actually had to do the whole program under streetlight. By day 5, I believe there was over 100 children that were coming. It was so nice to watch the kids sing songs and with all their hearts, and they really liked the Bible stories, the craft, and of course, the games. Our team had the joy of sharing books, pencils, treats, and toys with them. It was so precious to see that the simplest gifts, things like a hair tie or an eraser, it brought them so much happiness. Another highlight was when we shared resources with the conference children's ministry leader to support her work in local churches. When she was showing the supplies to the other workers, to see the joy on her face was priceless. You see, in Cuba, a little really goes a long way. Our team also did a health expo along with some health talks. At the end, we shared toiletries and we also shared eyeglasses for those whose eyes had gone bad. And these weren't even new glasses. They weren't worth much to us back home, but to them, you should have seen their smiles and laughter when some of them put their glasses on and then off and then on. These glasses weren't worth much, but seeing their smiles, that was priceless. That was unique and definitely impactful. In one community, a local elder housed my son Daniel and I in his small house. He gave up his bed for us, and he, along with his wife, went and slept at someone else's house. Who knows if they even had a bed where they stayed. The house was so simple, you could probably fit all this guy's possession on 3 shelves. He gave us his best, and he was so happy to do so. And that's not a lesson you can learn in a book or by watching a YouTube video. It's a lesson that really touched my heart, as I recognize how much I have in comparison to how little I actually give. This has impacted me to seek to give more from a heart filled with gratitude. So, after the elder left us, I sat on the bed thinking about their wonderful hospitality when someone came to the front door. So I went to the door, and there was a grandmother with a small baby in her arms. I'd never seen her before. She wasn't from the local church. She couldn't speak English, and of course I couldn't speak Spanish. You know what she wanted? She wanted me to bless her child. She wanted me to pray for her baby. So I prayed. A simple prayer for protection, for guidance, but especially for God to honor her faith. And I consecrated that little child to God and His service. I don't know how much she understood, but she had tears in her eyes. She thanked me and she went on her way. It was a moving experience for me, like if time stopped for a moment to make room for what really matters in life. I never met her before, and you know what? Probably I wouldn't recognize her if I'd meet her again. But something in my heart tells me that God is going to honor that prayer. I think God will reward her faith. The value of that blessing, only time will tell. But for now, to me, it's priceless. At one of the construction sites, we had no blocks to work with because of the many shortages in Cuba. And when the blocks finally did arrive, they were 3 different types of blocks, and some of them were actually recycled. And speaking of shortages, our bus driver actually had to wait in line 2 days to fill the gas tank so we could drive to the building site. But you know what? That church was built. And you can only imagine what it did to our faith, to my faith, in seeing what God can do with the impossible. That experience was priceless. And when we were building, Many local church members joined in the work. They were so happy that we had come. The ladies were actually crying when we left. They told us that they had waited for 26 years for the day when they could have their very own church. And it meant so much to them that their brothers and sisters from North America would remember them to actually come and work with them for the building of their own church. That impacted them. As for the evangelistic series, they were led by the youth from our team. It was so nice to see young people involved in sharing God's word with others. But to me, the most priceless part of the trip was Naomi's decision to fully give her life to Jesus. It was so precious to baptize her into God's remnant church. I cannot tell you how impactful that experience was to me. That was truly priceless. So overall, our Cuba trip was impactful on so many levels. And I do want to say thank you to those who supported us to make this trip possible. And if you're wondering if you should ever do something like this, just do it. It's totally worth it. It's true, you could just wire the money that you spent on your air ticket, and that would go a long way. But there are some things that you just can't experience virtually. Things like sweating, tears, hugs, answered prayers. But you know what's the greatest benefit of going? It creates in our youth a burden for missions. And that literally repays the air ticket 1,000-fold. How? This happens when that same young person becomes an adult and year after year decides to support God's work from their own heart and not just from their loose change. As I reflect on the trip as a whole, I think something else that made everything so priceless was the people. The people were the ones who were touched, and they were the ones who touched our hearts. People in the end are the most priceless because of the infinite and ultimate price that was paid for them and for us. Jesus paid the price with his own life so we could have hope and a future. So whether we're called to serve in Timbuktu or simply reach out to our neighbor next door, let's never forget that beyond the experiences we have, it's ultimately people that are priceless. And may the love that moved Christ also be the love that moves us.